Hi, I'm Will Studd. Welcome to Cheese Slices. For this program, I've travelled to Lombardy in Italy, a beautiful region, and I'm going to look at two cheeses, Gorgonzola and Tallegio. They're benchmarks recognised the world over, and they have a fascinating story. Well wonder what mountain caves and tired, weary cows have in common with Italian cheese. Believe it or not, the historic association is responsible for the creation of Gorgonzola and one of Italy's greatest secrets, cave ripened Tallegio. As far back as medieval times, it was common for herdsmen to graze their cows high in the Alps during summer. At this time of year, the green alpine pastures were covered with a variety of herbage and wildflowers, which produced exceptionally rich milk and, of course, some lovely, interesting cheeses. These cheeses were called stracchino, from the Lombardy word stracco, meaning tarred. What is not so clear is whether the name was a reference to the end-of-season milk or just the cows who'd walked halfway down a mountain. We do know that Gorgonzola has been famous since the 12th century and gets its name from a small village not far from Milan. Whilst Tallegio was only officially named by cheesemakers in the Val Tallegio Valley in the early 1900s. What made the familiar square-shaped cheeses we now call Tallegio quite different to other stracchino is the size of the cheeses and the way they are brine washed and ripened in natural limestone caves. The tradition of taking cows to the top of the mountains in Italy is now very rare, and almost all cheesemaking in this region is undertaken on the flat plains of Lombardy. I've travelled to Treviglio, a small town south of Milan where for more than 80 years the Mauri family has been producing some great regional cheeses. Emilio Mauri started his company in the 1920s, and since then the family name has become one of Italy's most respected when it comes to the finest Gorgonzola and Tallegio. Over 200,000 litres of milk a day are handled by this dairy, which has one section dedicated to making Tallegio and another to Gorgonzola. In the case of Tallegio, fresh warm milk is poured into large vats and mixed with starter culture and rennet. Once the curds are formed, they are cut and poured into square-shaped draining moulds. In deference to old cheese-making methods, this draining takes place on a loose bed of plastic straw. This is what creates the distinctive line marks on the surface of Mauri Tallegio. The fresh cheeses are turned several times over the next 12 hours, and it's during this stage they are branded with a special stamp, which is a sort of passport of authenticity. Can you explain to me a little bit about these stamps that you're putting on the cheese over there, this stamp here?
Before turning the cheese upside down, the stamp is set on the Tallegio, and the trademark of the farmers' cooperative is printed on its surface. Then the Tallegio is turned every 2 hours.
And this sign here?
This is the number of the cheese factory of Emilio Mauri S.p.A. of Treviglio.
So that's the number of the factory. The number 11 is the Mauri factory. Another traditional step sees the cheeses arranged in trays lined with jute cloth before they are salted. The trays are made of pine wood and are important because the saturated wood and damp cloth helps to retain moisture around the young Tallegio. They also prevent the naked cheeses from being squashed on their journey up to the mountains, where they're encouraged to develop a protective rind in the unique microclimate of the caves. In the case of Gorgonzola, specially selected milk is pumped into a shallow metal vat lined with cheesecloth. Once the curd is set, this cloth is pulled up to encourage further drainage. Careful handling is vital as the cheesemaker places alternate layers of the soft, sweet young curd into the round cheese hoops. This is the first step in creating Gorgonzola. Can you explain to me about this process here? Why is it so important for this hand ladling?
Ok. La cagliata quando è nel tavolo,
When the curd is on the table, it is drained,
subisce un drenaggio, lo
the whey sips out and it cools down.
È molto importante.
In order for the
perché
cheese
dalla
to be
parte
seasoned
esterna
successfully,
si raffredda prima della parte interna. E allora è molto
it is very
importante che
important that the
l'operatore
two parts of the cheese, the external part which cools down before the internal part does, are mixed properly.
Like the traditional Gorgonzola.
Esatto.
Yeah. And more than one vat?
Gorgonzola moderno
The
è
modern
un'altra
Gorgonzola
cosa.
is something else altogether, because the curd is already salty.
È salata.
Otherwise known as the king of Gorgonzola, Angelo has worked with this cheese for over 50 years, so he should know what he's talking about.
In this one, the curd is very tender and needs to be treated with a lot of care.
The 12-kilo rounds are turned every few hours before the young cheeses are removed from the hoops and transported to special underground cellars where they'll be matured. Nothing gets wasted here, and all the leftover whey is fed to pigs living nearby. These pigs are huge, and their cheese diet is so good that eventually they become another of the region's famous specialties, Parma ham. I'm underground in the cellars where Mauri mature all their Gorgonzola. It's quite cold and damp down here, just perfect for maturing blue mould, in fact. Mauri have got 8 of these rooms with over 36,000 cheeses, which represents just 10% of all the Gorgonzola held in this complex. More than 70% of all Gorgonzola is ripened by producers at a massive underground cellar complex, which was built just after World War II in the town of Novara. On arrival, young Gorgonzola are individually salted by hand, and depending on the type, some are wrapped in a belt of thin wooden slats. These slats provide support for the soft curd and absorb moisture from the cheese, which encourages the formation of a unique dry yeasty rind covered in powdery grey mould. Sadly, recent changes in Italian law has led to pressure from the authorities to replace the traditional slats with plastic belts. Angelo,
Yeah.
explain to me about the change from these wooden surrounds around the cheese to this plastic wrap. Why is that necessary?
Is new European lawyer change this?
For sanitary reasons.
Yes.
And is it a good law?
No good law. No good law. Because traditional is the best.
So the tradition. So you would like to stay with the traditional wood?
Yes, is the best.
And the wood draws the moisture from the cheese?
Quello aiuta il formaggio a...
Traditionally, the wooden surroundings are the best. They help the cheese to clean itself, while the plastic wrap can create some problems.
Può creare qualche problema.
So the plastic has a quality problem too. Also,
Fortunatamente ci consentono ancora di usare queste.
Let's hope we will be allowed to keep using these shelves to maintain an old tradition.
Ancora di più.
I wish and hope it won't happen.
luckily, they can still use the pine shelves, which absorb some of the serum.
Speriamo che ci consentono di usarle nel tempo, perché così possiamo conservare più a lungo una tradizione che da anni ci portiamo.
And do you think this will change in the future?
Io spero, mi auguro di no.
Over the following weeks, the Gorgonzola are spiked a number of times with long stainless steel needles. These allow oxygen to enter into the heart of the cheese, which encourages the development of the characteristic blue-green moulds first added to the vats at Treviglio. Blue mould develops along the tracks left by the needles and in open nooks and crannies in the cheese. There are two distinct varieties of Gorgonzola, Dolce and Picante. Dolce Gorgonzola, literally meaning sweet, was developed in the 1930s. A modern adaptation of the original Picante, it is soft and sweet and slightly fruity. These days, Dolce represents the most popular type of Gorgonzola in the world. Picante Gorgonzola is the more sophisticated of the pair, and like the original cheese is made from old milk, or in this case, milk collected from two separate milkings. It takes more than 90 days to age Gorgonzola Picante, and the unique chemistry of the cellars encourages the development of a complex spicy blue mould. By comparison, Dolce Gorgonzola takes only 60 days to mature. These Dolce Gorgonzola cheeses are ready for market and are transported back to Pasturo for packaging. Mauri has its home office and packaging plant high in the Italian Alps at Pasturo. This state-of-the-art facility is built onto the mountainside where caves have been used for generations to mature Tallegio cheeses. This room is one of 3 where Tallegio is ripened. Its secret lies behind this window here. These vents allow cold air from the mountainside to come into the room and keep it at a constant 5 degrees and 95% humidity. That's the perfect temperature to ripen Tallegio. These cheeses are matured for between 35 to 40 days. They are bathed and rubbed with a brine solution at regular intervals and stored on jute cloth and wooden trays. Unlike many industrial Tallegio, which can be quite bland and acidic, a cave-ripened cheese develops a dry, orangey grey rind and a soft, bulging texture. Rich and creamy, a well-matured cheese has an unmistakable hint of cured meats, a reminder perhaps of the poor old pigs. Unlike many washed rind cheeses, there's no question that the thin, chewy rind should be eaten to appreciate the special yeasty flavours created by the maturation in the caves. There are thousands of recipes that use Tallegio and Gorgonzola as the main flavour ingredient. This is one of my favourites, Gorgonzola penne. Good quality penne pasta is cooked in salted boiling water. Meanwhile, butter is melted in the pan, accompanied by a generous slice of Gorgonzola. You can use either Dolce or Picante for this recipe. Fresh cream and sage leaves are added, and the heat is turned down, allowing the dish to simmer for just a few minutes. Add freshly ground nutmeg, a pinch of salt, and a dash more cream. Just before serving, remove the sage leaves and add some freshly ground Parmigiano Reggiano. The end result is simply delicious. Another dish famous in this part of Italy mixes polenta with Tallegio, and I was lucky enough to watch this being prepared by executive chef Ferdinando Tagliateri, or Dado as he's locally known.
This is a good way to spend an evening.
Roughing it as usual, Angelo and I enjoy a sunset over the Alps, while Fernando was hard at work creating his polenta masterpiece.
Now, this polenta terrain is very typical for this area. It's maize and cheese taleggio and butter finish. It's very good.
So right now in that pot is just polenta
Yes.
and hot water.
Water.
And
Okay.
how long do you have to cook that for?
Around 1 hour is about.
Just gently stirring
Yes.
all the time.
Everything, all time, turn.
it doesn't burn.
And mix.
Yeah.
Mix taleggio and turn for 1 hour.
1 hour.
1
so we
hour.
can sit and enjoy this beautiful scenery for
Yes.
another hour. That's nice. Fantastic.
Very nice.
This dish combines yellow and brown polenta and water in a copper pot. To this, small chunks of Tallegio are slowly added. In this case, Fernando has added about 8 kilos of cheese. After several hours of stirring, butter is added. And the dish is served in a terracotta bowl, the final ingredient being some grated Parmigiano Reggiano. Needless to say, it's not a dish recommended in large serves, unless, of course, you're very, very hungry. My favourite way to enjoy Tallegio is spread on a pizza base and covered with lashings of freshly grated black pepper, which emphasises the creamy nature of the cheese. Bellissimo. After dinner, there was just one more thing to do, a tasting of Gorgonzola with Angelo in one of the caves.
That's lovely and soft.
So,
I love it. Yeasty. This is Gorgonzola dolce.
gorgonzola dolce è prodotto con latte fresco appena munto,
So it's produced from fresh milk,
ha un penicillium delicato
a delicate penicillium,
e una stagionatura di 60 giorni.
and only matured for 60 days. And which is the most popular in Italy?
This is most popular.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yes.
And for you, King of Gorgonzola, which do you like?
I like this.
Oh, let's have a taste of that one. Here you go. But give me a taste of that one. It's good.
Very good. Very good.
Delicious.
Yes.
I asked Angelo to tell me a little of his history with these cheeses.
Io ho purtroppo 65 anni e vivo.
I am 65 years old, and for the past 47 years have produced cheese.
Ho iniziato la mia attività
I started by cleaning a boiler used for the production of Parmigiano,
della produzione per il grana, per il parmigiano, passando nei vari stadi alla
and then I moved
stagionatura,
through the various stages of its production, the making, the seasoning, and the packaging.
E oggi mi occupo di un parte tecnica particolare.
Today
sul
I'm in charge of the
gorgonzola,
marketing of Gorgonzola around the world.
commercializzazione in tutto il mondo.
And why is it that Italians love cheese so much?
Io amo il formaggio perché sono nato nel formaggio, è il mio primo lavoro.
I love cheese because I was born in the cheese industry. To work in the cheese industry is like having a disease, an incurable disease.
Avere una malattia. È una malattia che è inguaribile.
I learned to really love cheese, and I will love it until my last day here
E lo
on
amerò
Earth.
fino all'ultimo giorno che resterò sulla terra.
The origins of Gorgonzola are shrouded in the past, but local legend says it was discovered by an innkeeper after fresh cheeses were stored in his damp cellars by passing herdsmen. These cheeses were forgotten in the celebrations that followed, and finding they'd turned blue some months later, he served them up to his unexpecting customers. The rest of the story is history. The names of these great cheeses are legally protected under Italian regulations. But if you really want to enjoy great Gorgonzola, look out for the traditional picante. And as for Tallegio, make sure it's been cave ripened. These are the cheeses against which all others that bear the famous name should be measured.